What's up everyone, and welcome to episode 19 of the series. This time we're looking at Rare, the Xbox dev with the deepest history of over 100 games produced. That's a lot to discuss, so let's get to it.
Our world has a rhythm. We all sense it. But only a few truly feel it.
Founded in 1985, this British developer was established by Tim and Chris Stamper after leaving Ultimate Play the game. Another developer they founded that at that point was one of the UK's largest developers, producing ZX Spectrum hits like Jetpack and Sabrewolf. However, due to the Spectrum's popularity not extending out of the UK, they went to Japan and successfully impressed Nintendo with several NES tech demos, to the point where they were given an unlimited budget to create games for the system. This partnership was so successful that by the release of Donkey Kong Country in 1994, Rare had become the premier second-party developer for Nintendo, which came to own a 49% stake in the company. Rare then attracted even more critical acclaim during the N64 era with games like GoldenEye, Banjo-Kazooie, Perfect Dark, and Conker's Bad Fur Day. It would however be the next generation when this successful partnership would end. Rare's first and only game for the Nintendo GameCube was Star Fox Adventures. Originally an N64 game called Dinosaur Planet, Shigeru Miyamoto then suggested Rare redesign it as part of the Star Fox series for Nintendo's new console. Despite a big change in gameplay for the Star Fox series, the game still received positive reviews and went on to sell 2 million copies. Yet even at the start of the generation, it was clear the cost of game development was significantly increasing, and because of this, Nintendo's once unlimited budget for Rare became limited. They also didn't purchase the company's remaining stake, something the Stampers were surprised by, considering rareware was a huge reason why the N64 had any real success compared to the dominant PS1. This forced Rare to look for potential buyers, and on September 24, 2002, the day after Star Fox Adventure's release, Microsoft acquired them for $375 million, as this was the largest offer. Characters from games developed by Rare such as Conker and Banjo moved to Microsoft, while IP created by Nintendo like Donkey Kong and Star Fox would remain. Additionally, since Microsoft was not part of the handheld market, Rare continued developing games for Nintendo's portable systems post-acquisition, including 2 spin-offs for the Banjo franchise.
What did Microsoft bring to the deal apart from money?
We wanted a partner with the right vision, a vision and optimism for the future, and just listening to what Microsoft has been portraying in the recent past. I mean, it's there. There's a lot of optimism, and that is really good to see. We believe in this industry. We've been making games for over 20 years, and it's our life. And we want someone that actively believes in the future.
Although Rare was now financially secure to create games, they would find the transition from Nintendo to Microsoft would be a long, grueling process that would negatively affect their next few releases. The first of these was Xbox's Grab by the Ghoulies, which was originally in development as a larger non-linear platformer for the GameCube. It got mixed reviews, with the graphics being praised, while criticism primarily directed at the very simplistic gameplay. According to Rare, converting the game to Xbox was far more difficult than anticipated. This forced the simplified gameplay and linear design to have it ready in less than a year for its mandated release date. Circumstances were so bad that the game even releasing was considered a success. Their next game, 2005's Conker Live and Reloaded, was also developed with the transition to Xbox in mind. Though development started the moment Rare was acquired, the single player was just a remaster of the 2001 N64 game to shorten development time. And even then, the remaster wasn't well received due to the increased censorship, which detracted from comedic highlights such as the great Mighty Pooh song. However, its multiplayer was completely new and successfully capitalized on the very young Xbox Live. This mode remained in the top 10 most played online titles for Xbox well into 2007. Conker would be Rare's last original Xbox game, but they'd still be feeling the aftereffects of acquisition in the next generation. This is best seen in one of their 2 launch Xbox 360 titles, Cameo Elements of Power, which was primarily known for its prolonged development cycle that spanned 4 Nintendo and Microsoft consoles. Originally conceived as an N64 Pokemon clone before moving to GameCube, its light-hearted Nintendo overtones were replaced for darker themes more befitting of the Xbox. Then when the game was about 80% finished, it was delayed again to become a launch Xbox 360 title. Whilst this delay did allow Rare to up the visuals and add local co-op, the horrendous development only led to a 79 on Metacritic, and was draining on the team that years later, its creative director essentially disowned the game and said it should never have been released. The game also didn't sell much, resulting in Microsoft cancelling Cameo 2. The second of Rare's Xbox 360 launch titles was Perfect Dark Zero, a prequel to the original N64 masterpiece. Again, the game had a troubled development of over 5 years, with its starting life on the GameCube. However, unlike Cameo, which had time to add features for the Xbox 360 launch, several features were cancelled to make the date, including the ability to upload and watch multiplayer matches over Xbox Live. This was because the original Xbox version was still a year away from completion when the shift occurred. So even with the cut content and disappointing campaign, the game still received an 81 on Metacritic due to its amazing multiplayer. It also sold over 1 million copies at launch, but a sequel was never seriously considered, as Microsoft believed they had enough FPS franchises.
I am the great mighty Pooh, and I am going to throw my shit at you. A huge supply of teach comes from my chocolate starfish. How about some scat, you little twat?
Rare's next game, 2006's Viva Pinata, would be a very different gameplay experience compared to previous Rare releases. This time, the player would breed various animal-based pinatas on an island whilst fending off intruders. Due to the kid-friendly art style of the game, Microsoft wanted it to become a key franchise for Xbox 360 and developed a TV show to accompany the game that spanned 2 seasons. The game also sold well to go with its 84 on Metacritic, leading to Phil Spencer publicly confirming the game was considered a success internally. However, its development team saw it as incomplete because many ideas were cut to meet deadlines, and so a sequel titled Viva Pinata: Trouble in Paradise was immediately greenlit and released in 2008. It became the definitive edition by adding new features like co-op, new pinatas, and new biomes, resulting in an excellent 82 on Metacritic. During development of both Viva Pinatas, Rare also dipped their toe into Xbox Live Arcade with 2007's Jetpack Refueled, a remake of the 1983 ZX Spectrum game. Because of the smaller scale of the project, the team had creative control, with Microsoft generally leaving them alone throughout development. It was praised for its graphics, but its repetitive nature meant only a 72 on Metacritic. Post Viva Pinata, Rare was now officially done with projects that started development while at Nintendo. However, it would be their next game that would drag them to their lowest point, 2008's Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. The project initially started off as a remake of the first game, but with it only being 3 years since Conker, Rare cancelled the project fearing Xbox 360 gamers would dismiss it as another Rare rehash. It was then decided to develop a sequel that would shift the focus from a pure platformer to one emphasizing vehicle construction, where players designed custom vehicles like cars and boats and used them to complete challenges. Again, this was because Rare leadership feared that audiences would not accept a traditional platformer in 2008, despite there being no evidence of this. As you can imagine, fans of the series were not happy with this drastic change. Though Nuts and Bolts received generally positive scores, as reviewers were assessing the game for what it was, it only sold 140,000 copies by the end of 2008 because fans of the series were looking at it for what it wasn't, and wanted nothing to do with what many considered a betrayal of the franchise. It also solidified the decline of Rare's reputation, where even the best successes like Viva Pinata were not held in the same regard as the N64 masterpieces they created. Even Microsoft agreed. They laid off a significant percentage of Rare staff and forced the remaining ones to shift focus to Xbox Live avatars and the upcoming Kinect. Former Xbox executive Peter Moore even publicly voiced his disappointment, noting that Rare was attempting to recreate the glory years, but their skills had become outdated and were no longer applicable in today's market. Of course, Rare disagreed, with senior stars such as Grant Kirkhope believing that Microsoft had ruined Rare when they started forcing their corporate structure on them. The developer was at rock bottom, but there was one small light at the end of the long tunnel. Phil Spencer, who Rare always enjoyed a good relationship with and claimed he was always supportive of them. Keep that in mind. Rare's first Kinect game was 2010's Kinect Sports, which was essentially the peripheral's Wii Sports. It was generally well received, but most importantly, it sold 3 million copies. Far more than any other Rare game on Xbox, and especially impressive considering it required the Kinect, though it essentially assured Rare would remain a Kinect developer even when they didn't want to be. The sequel released a year later with 6 new sports and voice support. However, just like with the Wii, enthusiasm between this new way to play games was fading, and it only received a 66 on Metacritic. The final game in the franchise was Kinect Sports Rivals, a monumental game in Xbox history that would shift the landscape of gaming forever. That's because it arrived in April 2014, 6 months after the launch of the Xbox One. This meant Kinect, which was initially forced on the consumer with every Xbox One purchase, didn't have a potential killer app to show why it was a necessary part of Xbox's future. So by the time Rivals finally released, Kinect was already all but dead. Who knows if this would have been the case if not for the Rivals delay? Unfortunately for Rare, who had all 200 staff working on it, the delay and the already tepid response to Kinect caused them a significant monetary loss. But fortunately, the one guy who had been supportive of them since 2002 was placed in charge of Xbox in March 2014. They could now shine under Phil Spencer.
You never forget your first game. And the more of them you play, the more of them you love. Every memory is a story to cherish and share. We fought back monsters, soared across the stars, achieved the impossible. We were heroes. There were games that blew us apart, and games that brought us together. Whether you're reliving childhood memories, or discovering classics for the first time, you'll see why the best stories will never be forgotten.
2015 was Rare's 30th anniversary, and so to celebrate the significant milestone, they released Rare Replay, a compilation of 30 Rare and Ultimate Play the Game titles that celebrated their history. Rare added quality of life features like a rewind and manual saves for those particularly hard games like Battletoads, and included several candid interviews and BTS footage that would unlock as players progressed through the games. All of this resulted in Rare's biggest success on the Xbox. Rare Replay was the most pre-ordered game of that year's E3, and when it did come out, it received critical acclaim, which described it as the pinnacle of compilation releases. The only critique was that due to licensing, key games like GoldenEye and Donkey Kong Country were omitted, though no one could fault Rare for this as they had no control over these contracts. Unfortunately for GoldenEye at least, it was announced only a couple of months ago that licensing had been sorted, and it will be coming to Rare Replay for free. You can't get fairer than that. Following this successful compilation that wouldn't have happened without Phil, Rare could now also take their time to make what they wanted, as Phil also gave them that freedom missing from previous Xbox leadership. This positive development environment resulted in 2018's Sea of Thieves, a pirate-themed sandbox Rare created for players to create their own stories. Unlike similar games such as DayZ, Rare aspired to create a more lighthearted and accessible version of these games, though any final design decisions would be borne out of the Insider program, which granted fans access to an early build of the game. It's therefore not a surprise that despite its initial mixed reviews, Sea of Thieves found a dedicated audience straight away. Additionally, unlike other Xbox developers, Rare figured out how to create a successful live service model that would regularly provide content, which helped significantly improve its overall reception. But perhaps most importantly, Sea of Thieves was an evergreen commercial success and became Microsoft's most successful original IP of the Xbox One generation, attracting more than 30 million players by June 2022. Rare were now well and truly back to their N64 era glory days. Due to the success of Sea of Thieves, it's afforded Rare to take their time with new releases. In fact, the only upcoming Rare project we know of is the action-adventure game Everwild, a new IP that was announced at XO19. Rare also released a second CG trailer in 2020, which brings me to the only negative point I have to say about the Phil Spencer era Rare. Since its announcement over 3 years ago, we haven't had a second of gameplay. That's a terrible look that we've seen time and time again with Xbox first party this generation. However, unlike other Xbox games announced way too early like Avowed, there has been unofficial updates from journalists like Jeff Grubb, who reported the game underwent leadership changes and a reboot, and is now expected to release in late 2023 at the earliest. Of course, we all want the game to be good, but it's just another example of how Microsoft bungled their initial first-party announcements this generation, as clearly, the game was nowhere near ready to be publicly announced in 2019. Between this, Perfect Dark, Avowed, and many others, hopefully Phil has learned from this mistake. Aside from this one negative point though, it doesn't take much away from what Rare has transformed itself into ever since there was finally Microsoft leadership who let Rare be Rare. And as we've seen from Phil, we know he'll give this rejuvenated developer as much time as they need to get Everwild right. I just hope we're not waiting too much longer for a second of gameplay.